Chapter 417. Ah. Chu Lingfeng looks at her with a dumbfounded expression. Master. I didn't think so much. His face was filled with helplessness. Chu Lingfeng really didn't think so much, he just wanted to desperately increase his strength. Therefore, when those people punched and kicked him, he could absorb less power, so he wanted to let them use weapons to cut him. He didn't consider what would happen if he accidentally died on the stage. In his opinion, Master was so good to him and also saved him and his mother. For Master, even if he died on the stage, it didn't matter. So he fought desperately to the extreme. But he didn't think that if he died on the stage, how could he repay and protect Master in the future? Thinking of this, Chu Lingfeng hangs his head with a depressed face. Master, I'm sorry. It's good that you know you're wrong. Luo Qingtong looks at him and throws a bottle of liquid medicine over. Drink this medicine. What about the medicine on your body? Luo Qingtong remembers that before she left a lot of medicine for Chu Lingfeng and the others, enough for them to use for half a year. What about the medicine? It's all used up. Chu Lingfeng whispers. Every time he went on the stage he was almost always carried down. If it weren't for the good quality of Luo Qingtong's medicine, who knows how many times he would have died. Naturally, the medicine was used up very quickly. Luo Qingtong looks at him, the corners of her mouth twitching, and gives him a large amount of medicine again. Take these. If it's not enough, let me know. Also, Luo Qingtong taps the table with her index finger, and takes out the purple recommendation card from her waist ring. This recommendation card is for you. From tomorrow onwards, don't go to the bloody arena. Go to the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. There are many experts there, you can find someone to compare notes with. On the stage, they won't casually decide people's life and death. It's very suitable for you to increase your strength. The more this blockhead is beaten, the stronger he becomes. Luo Qingtong thought that the bloody arena was very suitable for him. Now it seemed that he had misunderstood. In the end, the bloody arena was a place for life and death battles. Even if the people in the bloody arena wanted to watch, it was very easy for something to happen in the arena. What's more, Chu Lingfeng needed to be beaten up in order to increase his strength. This made it even easier for others to plot against him. Didn't he run into it when he came back this time? If it wasn't for this blockhead's special physique, who knows how many times he would have died. In comparison, the Sacred Institute of the Empire of Qin was different. As a student, Chu Lingfeng could find anyone to spar with, and no one would casually kill him. Luo Qingtong felt that it was very suitable for him. Luo Qingtong didn't intend to use this purple recommendation card. Chapter 418. Chu Lingfeng foolishly looked at Luo Qingtong, not knowing how to react. Mistress, He looked at the purple recommendation card and was speechless for a long time. Purple was extremely precious. In the true Spill continent, purple represented grace, luxury, and mystery. Generally, a purple recommendation card indicated that the other party valued it. Not to mention, this purple recommendation card was even better. Chu Lingfeng was stupid, but he knew how precious this recommendation card was. And Luo Qingtong had delivered it to him. In an instant, Chu Lingfeng wanted to cry. Besides his mother, Mistress was the person who treated him the best in the world. Mistress, you can rest assured. I will definitely fight well and live up to Mistress's expectations. Chu Lingfeng choked with sobs. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. Go to the Empire of Qin's Holy Institute and fight well? If one didn't know better, they would think that she was deliberately sending someone to cause trouble. But, Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. Good, fight well there. Alright, there's someone called Xuanhuan. If you have nothing to do, go and find him to spar with. Luo Qingtong said with a smile on her lips. She would first find something for Xuanhuan to do. When she entered the Empire of Qin's Holy Institute, she would find him to settle accounts. Remember, you are not allowed to not fight back when you are hit or scolded. You are my subordinate. If you are hit, it is the same as hitting my face. If you do this again, you don't need to come back to see me. Do you understand? I understand. Chu Lingfeng was completely enlightened. Hitting him was the same as hitting Mistress's face. That was unacceptable. Mistress, you can rest assured. I will not lose your face. Chu Lingfeng secretly swore in his heart. When he went to the Empire of Qin's Holy Institute, he would definitely fight for Mistress. That's right, Mistress had just mentioned that Xuanhuan. He would definitely teach him a lesson. Okay. Luo Qingtong nodded with satisfaction. This was the best thing about Chu Lingfeng. Regardless of whether she was right or wrong, he would always listen to her. Being stupid had its benefits. By the way, I haven't been in the mansion recently. Did anything happen? Yes. Chu Lingfeng nodded and said to Luo Qingtong, after Mistress left, people from the Lanyue aristocratic family came to visit and sent a purple invitation card, inviting Mistress to visit the Lanyue aristocratic family. As he spoke, he took out the purple name card from his body. Before coming here, Chu Lingfeng had specially made a trip back to the mansion and brought out the purple name card. Luo Qingtong took the purple name card. At first glance, she knew what was going on. So that little fellow is a member of the Lanyue aristocratic family? As soon as the name card mentioned him, Luo Qingtong thought of the cute little boy she had saved in the Nine Magi Mountains. It seemed that he had been found by the Lanyue aristocratic family at that time and brought back safely. Okay, I see. Is there anything else? Luo Qingtong put away the name card. Yes. Chu Lingfeng nodded honestly. Many people want Mistress to refine medicine. The Bloody Arena gave me a list of the medicines they wanted to refine and the things they sent. Mistress, take a look. As he spoke, he took out the list. Although Chu Lingfeng was stupid, he still remembered Luo Qingtong's matters clearly. He had brought all of them with him on this trip. He probably knew that Luo Qingtong didn't want to reveal her identity, so he naturally wouldn't return to the mansion. Okay. Luo Qingtong nodded and took it. Chapter 419. The Imperial Family of Tianyu? Luo Qingtong's expression turned playful. She looked at the list of benefits. In order to get her to refine medicine, the Imperial Family of Tianyu had offered an extraordinary price. Not only that, the Emperor of Tianyu had also humbled himself in the letter, saying that he had already punished the 7th princess and the Empress. What happened to the Fei clan had nothing to do with the Imperial family. All of this was to get Luo Qingtong to help the martial emperors of Tianyu recover their strength. Ha! Luo Qingtong chuckled. If the Emperor of Tianyu knew that the person he was begging was the young miss of the Luo clan, whom he had always looked down on, who knew what kind of expression he would have? Apart from the Imperial Family of Tianyu, I'll agree to everyone else's request. Luo Qingtong glanced at the list and threw it to Chu Lingfeng. Also, tell the people of the Bloody Arena that I won't accept any orders from the Imperial Family of Tianyu no matter how high the price is. Tell them not to offer me anything. Luo Qingtong had purposely refused to accept any orders from the Imperial Family of Tianyu. Furthermore, he had accepted everyone's call but not theirs. This was a clear sign of displeasure and dissatisfaction. Luo Qingtong believed that with the Emperor of Tianyu's temperament, he would definitely vent his anger on the Empress and Xuanhuan. These two had bullied the original owner and the Luo clan so badly. She wanted them to have a taste of what it was like to be bullied. Yes, master. Chu Lingfeng agreed and put away the list. With his temperament, he didn't know why Luo Qingtong had accepted everyone's orders but not the Imperial Family of Tianyu. In any case, she could accept anyone she wanted. No one could stop her. Master, I'll take my leave first. Chu Lingfeng said to Luo Qingtong. There's no hurry. Luo Qingtong took out the things she had put in the trash ring, the things on the peak martial emperor. Take these things to the people of the Black Field. Tell them that I need his identity urgently. It'll be even better if they can find out the faction behind him and his master. Compared to the Imperial Family of Tianyu, the person who had plotted against the original owner was more like a fishbone stuck in her throat. Luo Qingtong had to find out who that person was. Okay. Chu Lingfeng put the things away. Remember to tell the Blackfield's people to investigate in secret. That person was against the Luo clan. Luo Qingtong didn't want others to know her relationship with the Luo clan. At least for now. She was still not strong enough. Yes. Chu Lingfeng nodded heavily. Master, I understand. I will go and tell those people in the dark domain later. Okay. Also, these pills, give them to them as well. Tell them that once they find out who it is, they'll benefit from it. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she took out 5 bottles of elixirs from her trash ring. Give these 2 bottles to them and let them auction them. As for the remaining 3 bottles, keep these 2 for yourself. The last bottle is for your mother. She'll wake up after taking it. Luo Qingtong gave Chu Lingfeng the spirit-strengthening pill and the spirit-understanding pill. These 2 types of pills, when taken together, were extremely beneficial to the improvement of one's strength. However, taking too many of them would affect one's foundation. Luo Qingtong didn't want Chu Lingfeng to be like Luo Xining, who only had cultivation but not much strength. Therefore, she didn't give him too many pills. These 2 bottles of pills were for him to strengthen his strength. As for the last bottle of pills, it was naturally the Yin Soul pill. Luo Qingtong made these pills especially for Chu Lingfeng's mother. Chapter 420. Master, you are so good to me. Chu Lingfeng's eyes turned red as he held the bottles of medicinal pills. Luo Qingtong quickly stopped him when she saw that he was about to cry again. Alright, don't cry. Go and see your mother. By the way, you must do what I asked you to do as soon as possible. I will wait for you outside the Blackfield subsidy for the next few days. Come back to me as soon as you have any news. Yes, master. Don't worry. I will do it well. Chu Lingfeng said as he walked out of the door. Luo Qingtong also left the private room a while after he left. However, she paid for this private room. When Chu Lingfeng found out the news, he would come to this private room to look for her. That way the blockhead wouldn't be able to find her. No matter how careful he was, he would inevitably be exposed. Luo Qingtong didn't want to expose her identity to the blockhead. After leaving the Blackfield subsidy, Luo Qingtong released Little Mingzun and Little Pig from her sleeves. Alright, don't be angry. I was afraid that you would cause some trouble in the Blackfield subsidy, so I locked you in my sleeves. Seeing Little Mingzun's sour face, Luo Qingtong leaned over and kissed his face. Don't be unhappy. You don't want others to see you like this, right? Luo Qingtong looked at him with a smile. Yi Qianxian snorted coldly. He didn't want to talk to her. However, Luo Qingtong wasn't the kind of person who would ignore others just because they didn't talk to her. She looked at Yi Qianxian's awkward appearance and immediately went up to him with a smile. Here, I bought you a gift. Do you like it? Luo Qingtong handed the Tonghulu skewers that she bought in the Blackfield subsidy to Yi Qianxian. She specially asked someone to make a small skewer for her. However, it was still too big in front of Yi Qianxian. That hawthorn was almost as big as Little Mingzun's head. When it was placed in front of Yi Qianxian, it looked especially cute. Yi Qianxian looked at the hawthorn skewers. Before he could say anything, Little Pig beside him had already shouted. Master, I want it too. Little Pig looked at the Tonghulu skewers with sparkling eyes. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself to others. I've been with this woman for so long, but she never bought me anything. Whenever this man came, she would buy this and that for him. Was it because his face was cuter than hers? This is a world. Just when Little Pig was making a fuss about wanting to eat, Yi Qianren snatched the hawthorn with a cold face. That pair of cold and gloomy eyes stared coldly at Little Pig. This is this sovereign's. He never shared his things with outsiders. Not to mention this woman gave it to him. Holy shit. Little Pig looked at him with a dumbfounded expression. Does this man need to do this? Isn't it just the Tonghulu skewers? Does he need to look at me with such a gaze as if he wants to chop me into pieces? Little Pig was speechless. Master. He looked at Luo Qingtong with tears in his eyes, trying to gain some sympathy. However, Luo Qingtong was watching Yi Qianxian eat the Tonghulu skewers with her hand supporting her forehead. She didn't even notice Little Pig. The way Little Mingzun ate the Tonghulu skewers was too cute. Luo Qingtong watched as he hugged the round candied hawthorn and gnawed on it. His cheeks were puffed up, and her heart almost melted from his cuteness. Chapter 421. It's alright. Yi Qianxian actually didn't really like eating it. The taste was too strange. It was both sour and sweet. But since it was a gift from this woman, he would just have to put up with it. Yi Qianxian felt that it wasn't that bad after all. Is that so? Luo Qingtong supported her forehead with her hand and looked at him with a smile. In the next second she leaned forward. I'll have a bite too. As she spoke, she took a bite of the candied haw in front of Yi Qianxian. She bit off more than half of the candied haw at the spot where he had just bitten. It's pretty good. Luo Qingtong said as she licked the candied haw at the corner of her mouth. Her smile was enchanting and wanton. Let's eat together? Yi Qianren looked at the candied hawthorn in front of her that was half bitten off and then looked at the moistness on Luo Qingtong's lips that she had just licked. Her eyes darkened. Emin? He slowly nodded and took a bite at the spot where Luo Qingtong had bitten earlier. His cold and gloomy gaze was fixed on Luo Qingtong. It was the gaze of a man looking at a woman. It was also the gaze of a hunter looking at his prey. Gloomy, fiery, and determined to win. It was just that Yi Qianren's figure was too small and too cute. Instead, it covered up the dangerous aura within. Luo Qingtong lowered her head and bit into the candied haw, so she didn't notice it. On the other hand, Little Pig caught sight of the expression in Yi Qianxian's eyes. He couldn't help but cover his eyes. Oh my god. This woman is just acting. Let's see what she'll do in the future. The two of them finished the candied haw together. Seeing that it was getting late, Luo Qingtong found a secluded place and took out the spirit boat flying ship. She brought Yi Qianren and Little Pig on board. For the next few days she would stay near the Blackfield subsidy and wait for Chu Lingfeng to bring her news. Every day Luo Qingtong would enter the city and sit in the private room for a while. Yi Qianxian and Little Pig stayed in the ship. Luo Qingtong knew that Yi Qianxian didn't like being locked in her sleeve, so she didn't put him inside. 3 days later, Chu Lingfeng happily brought his mother to thank Luo Qingtong. Master. My mother is well. Mother, this is Master. Chu Lingfeng excitedly introduced his mother to the two of them. The woman standing behind Chu Lingfeng was about 30 years old. She had a gentle and calm temperament and was very magnanimous. Just by standing there she gave off an indescribable aura. Mississippi, she bowed deeply to Luo Qingtong. Thank you for saving us. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid we would have died. Feng, wouldn't have had such a great opportunity to enter the holy court of the Empire of Qin. Thank you, miss. Luo Qingtong smiled indifferently. No need to thank me. This is what he deserves with his sincerity. Luo Qingtong didn't care who the recommendation letter was for. Chapter 422. Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up as she heard this. She was indeed a bit worried about the Blackfield subsidy. After Chu Lingfeng left, she didn't have anyone she could trust. It wasn't that she couldn't transfer people from the Luo family, but those people might not be familiar with the situation in the Blackfield subsidy. It would be difficult to take over. Moreover, Luo Qingtong had many people under her command, but the only ones she truly trusted were Su Yu and Chu Lingfeng. Of these two people, one had sworn an oath to never betray her. The other was loyal and pure, wholeheartedly devoted to her. Only these two people were the ones she trusted the most. Now that Yen Yang had taken over the Blackfield subsidy, it couldn't be better. Luo Qingtong could see that Yen Yang was not an ordinary person. The other party's aura was different from others. Obviously, there was a reason why they had fallen to this point. Although Luo Qingtong didn't understand Yen Yang, she understood Chu Lingfeng. The other party would never betray her. As Chu Lingfeng's mother, Yen Yang could also be trusted. Thinking this, Luo Qingtong nodded and settled this matter. With Luo Qingtong's permission, Yen Yang took over the Blackfield subsidy. She quickly handled the matter properly, and Luo Qingtong didn't have to worry about it anymore. She even handled the matter of the cooperation with the Bloody Arena very well. She had shown great skill in dealing with it. The pills given by Luo Qingtong under her operation set off a storm in the entire Blackfield. No one thought that evil Dr. Ghost Eye could actually refine pills. Even though Luo Qingtong had only refined the lowest level of elixir and had purposely lowered the retention rate of the elixir, it was already shocking enough in the eyes of everyone. In the True Spill continent, the status of alchemist was transcendent. Then the status of alchemists could only be described as rare. The alchemists of True Spill continent were all old monsters that had lived through countless years. Every one of them was immersed in the path of being an alchemist. Who knew how long it would take for them to stand out from the ranks of alchemists and be promoted to an alchemist? Even a Saint Realm expert would not be able to move these people. But now, there was an alchemist in such a small city in the Blackfield of the eastern border country? In an instant, the entire True Spill continent shook. Many forces came one after another. Luo Qingtong's medicinal pill finally sold for a sky-high price. However, the people from various forces were still unwilling to give up. They were searching for Luo Qingtong everywhere. He wanted to rope in this alchemist. However, Luo Qingtong was too good at hiding. Everyone asked around, but they didn't even know who evil Dr. Gui Tong was, where he came from, or what he looked like. Not to mention trying to win him over. The other party was backed by the Blackfield, so it was impossible for them to use force. Suddenly, everyone was burning with anxiety, looking for evil Dr. Gui Tong everywhere. Luo Qingtong's reputation as an evil doctor also rose rapidly after this auction, almost reaching the peak. For many people from large forces, they might not be able to invite an old monster-level alchemist, but they had a great chance of inviting evil Dr. Gui Tong. Naturally, they were very concerned about this. Yen Yang and the others also received a great deal of attention. At this time, Luo Qingtong was incomparably glad that she had saved Yen Yang. Otherwise, how could that big fool Chu Lingfeng deal with these matters? It would be strange if he wasn't skinned alive by those treacherous forces. Fortunately, the one in charge now was Yen Yang. Chapter 423. Great Yong Dynasty. Looking at the news that Yen Yang gave her, Luo Qingtong frowned slightly. It turned out to be someone from the Great Yong Dynasty, but the specific identity still needed to be investigated. The information from Blackfield was very vague. It was said that the other party's identity was hidden very well. They also spent a lot of effort to find out the approximate origin of the other party. It would take time to continue investigating. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. Even Blackfield couldn't find out the origin and identity of the other party in the first place. It could be assumed that the power behind the other party was not small. The background of the person behind the scenes was not simple. Sure enough, it was someone who couldn't be offended. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold. Let Blackfield continue investigating. Report to me when you get the news. Okay. Yin Yang nodded. After she left, Yi Qianming emerged from behind Luo Qingtong. If it was my people who investigated, they would have found out long ago. He looked at Luo Qingtong as he spoke. If this woman went back with him, this small matter would have been solved long ago. Don't try to fool me. Even so, I won't let you go back. Luo Qingtong pinched his little face. It didn't matter if the person behind the scenes was found out sooner or later. Anyway, she was not in a hurry to confront the other party. Let's go back. There was not much time before the opening of the Tianyu branch school. Luo Qingtong wanted to go back to the Luo family to explain everything and prepare everything. Only in this way could she leave without any worries. Luo Qingtong received a large amount of money from the elixir auction this time. After giving some to the bloody arena, Luo Qingtong still had a lot of money left. Luo Qingtong left some for Yen Yang and some for Chu Lingfeng. She also left some for Su Yu and the others. This time, she also received news from Chu Lingfeng that Su Yu had teleported back. The other party had already gained a firm foothold in the far west wilderness. It wouldn't be long before he could establish his own force. He didn't expect Su Yu to be so fast. Luo Qingtong knew that she must have suffered a lot there. It wasn't easy to make a name for oneself in a chaotic place like that. Looking at the letters sent by Su Yu, Luo Qingtong asked the people of Blackfield to help deliver a batch of medicinal liquid and medicinal pills. Luo Qingtong was not afraid that the people in the Blackfield would find out about her contact with Su Yu. She had a working relationship with Blackfield, so these things would definitely not escape Blackfield's eyes. Since that was the case, why bother to cover it up? There was nothing wrong with letting the Blackfield know. At least with them around, no one else would know. Chapter 424. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's eyes curved. She picked up little Mingzun and kissed him on the cheek. Humph. Yi Qianxian's face darkened after being rejected by Luo Qingtong. Now that he was kissed, he was gone. Forget it. This woman is too cautious. She won't believe anything I say. She will only think that I'm trying to find an excuse to escape. I'll just wait for my main body to catch up with me. Anyway, I can't wait for too long. Yi Qianxian knew that with his ability, even if his divided soul was imprisoned by Luo Qingtong, he would still be able to find out where the Holy Pen Spirit was. This woman had calculated everything, but she definitely didn't expect that the aura of the Holy Pen Spirit could be found. As long as he could find out the identity of the teacher who dared to attack Luo Qingtong, then Luo Qingtong's true identity would be exposed. Thinking of this, little Mingzun was no longer angry. Swoosh, swoosh. On the spirit ship, Luo Qingtong was focused on carving something with a piece of wood. In front of her, there were all kinds of parts. There were all kinds of big and small parts. Luo Qingtong bought a bunch of ores and materials when she left the Blackfield city of Dongli Nation. Little Pig thought she was going to refine tools. But he didn't expect her to just sit there and start carving wood. What are you doing? Little Pig jumped in front of her curiously and used his little hoof to fiddle with the parts on the table. Why does this thing look so familiar? Where have I seen it before? Little Pig thought as he propped his little hoof up and down. On the other side, Yi Qianxian's voice sounded. Is this the weird weapon you used in the Nine Magi Mountain? Little Mingzun walked with his hands behind his back to a part that Luo Qingtong had just finished carving. He picked it up and looked at it. Then he looked at Luo Qingtong. When he caught Luo Qingtong in the Nine Magi Mountain, he caught the weird weapon tied to her arm. It looked like a crossbow, but it was very skillful. The mechanism inside was very complicated. It was obviously an ordinary weapon, but the power it displayed was comparable to a spiritual weapon made by an ordinary weapon refiner. Most importantly, it didn't have any cultivation restrictions. He didn't have to worry about not being able to display its full power. After Yi Qianren obtained the crossbow, he brought it back for his people to study. What surprised him was that once the crossbow was disassembled, it couldn't be put back together. At that time, several elders of the tools department had even come to find him, hoping that he could find the person who had made this crossbow. It wasn't because he couldn't find it, it was because he couldn't find it. Moreover, if he found this woman, he would run away. Until now, Yi Qianren did not have a chance to ask Luo Qingtong about the crossbow. Now she was playing with it. Yi Qianxian only needed one glance to know that it was the same as the parts that came out of the crossbow. Before he met Luo Qingtong, he never thought that weapons could be like this. Yi Qianxian's expression was a little strange. He looked at the scattered parts. Those who didn't know would never know the use of these weird things. Who would have thought that these things, which were big or small, long or short, had no purpose at all and looked like abandoned garbage, would become such amazing killing weapons after they were successfully assembled? Chapter 425. Yes, Luo Qingtong nodded, but what I'm going to make now is not the crossbow from last time. As she spoke, she raised her hand and pinched Yi Qianxian's cheek. What's that? Yi Qianxian looked at the spare parts that filled the table. In his opinion, these spare parts were no different from the spare parts of the crossbow he saw last time. Idiot, Luo Qingtong looked at him with a smile. If I use that crossbow, won't I expose myself to you? Luo Qingtong didn't believe that this man didn't take the crossbow's drawing to find someone. Therefore, even if she were to make a weapon for the Luo family, she wouldn't make a crossbow. Moreover, although the crossbow's effect was good, once a martial lord cultivator could form a protective layer of energy, the crossbow might not be able to break through. What she wanted to make was an even more ruthless weapon to be used as a trump card for the Luo family. What's that? Little Ming Zun looked at her. His big and cute phoenix eyes stared at her without blinking. This guy, how long has it been? He already knows how to use this shell to act cute. Luo Qingtong felt her heart itch from his stare. She really wanted to kiss him again. At this moment, Little Pig also remembered the scene on Nine Magi Mountain after being reminded by Yi Qianxian. He stared at the spare parts that Luo Qingtong was cutting and said with his mouth wide open, "Is this a weapon similar to the crossbow you made?" "No, it's much more powerful." "Much more powerful." Luo Qingtong looked at them and narrowed her eyes slightly. What she made on Nine Magi Mountain before was a simplified version of the zhuge repeating crossbow, which didn't take much time. However, what she wanted to make this time was a weapon that was more complicated and lethal than the zhuge repeating crossbow. A spear. Swish, swish, swish. Luo Qingtong finished all the spare parts while she was chatting with Yi Qianxian and the others. She quickly assembled the parts. In fact, these parts were not particularly difficult to make, but because of the high precision required, except for Luo Qingtong who had the eye technique, no one in this different world could make such a weapon. Do you want to try? Luo Qingtong created a high-precision pocket-sized gun. When she held it in her hand, almost no one could see it. She raised her hand and aimed at Little Pig. The moment she moved, the latter felt a chill run down his spine. Without thinking, he jumped up and tried to run away. Oh my God! This woman was going to make fun of it again. However, just as it jumped up, bang bang bang, Luo Qingtong fired her gun. In the blink of an eye, Little Pig felt as if countless gusts of wind brushed past his body. In an instant, a pig-shaped silhouette formed by countless small holes appeared behind it. If Luo Qingtong wanted to attack Little Pig, all of these holes would have landed on Little Pig's body. Wah! F***ck, Little Pig fell to the ground with a thud. He looked at the pig-shaped silhouette in the air and stared blankly. Too fast. The speed was too fast. Before Little Pig could react, the bullets had already flown out. Not only that, the frequency of the shots and the strength of the attacks were too strong. Little Pig stared at the round holes on the flying ship with wide eyes. If he wasn't mistaken, Luo Qingtong didn't use any of her strength. How could she create such a powerful attack? Oh my God. It's too scary. Is this still an ordinary weapon? It's almost as powerful as a spiritual weapon. However, a spiritual weapon can only be used by a person who can use it. Chapter 426. Swoosh. Yi Qianxian also stood up from the table. That pair of large and slanted phoenix eyes stared at the circular hole that had appeared on the spaceship. His eyes were burning and shining to the extreme. How did you do it? This was clearly just an ordinary mortal weapon. Luo Qingtong smiled but didn't say anything. She couldn't explain to Yi Qianxian the so-called air principle, acceleration, and so on, so she could only remain silent. However, this gun model was very much to her liking. Based on the power of this gun, if it was made with specialized refining materials, its power should be even more powerful. Luo Qingtong made a rough estimation. Even if it was a martial lord expert, they would all die. As expected of the Terminator of the cold weapon era, a great killing machine. It was a pity that it relied too much on bullets. Once it ran out of bullets, it would be useless. It would be great if this problem could be solved. While Luo Qingtong was pondering, Little Pig was already squealing when he saw the round holes made by the bullets. Oh my God, if this was made with spiritual energy, I wouldn't even know how I died. Her speed and strength were too strong. This was just an ordinary mortal weapon. If she used her strength, wouldn't she be able to use the least amount of strength to achieve the greatest lethality? A low-level martial artist could also instantly kill a high-level martial artist? This was simply too terrifying. This completely subverted the rules of refining. He didn't know how this woman's brain worked. She was actually able to create such a terrifying killing machine. If those refiners knew about this, they would probably go crazy. Little Pig's words instantly reminded Luo Qingtong of something. If all these bullets were turned into spiritual energy, then, was it possible to create an energy-gathering array on the gun and use the martial artist's strength to activate this array to absorb the spiritual energy from the outside world and turn it into spiritual energy bullets? But how should she do it? The volume of an array was too large. It was impossible to condense it on the gun. Moreover, it was impossible for a spiritual array and a weapon to be perfectly integrated. Suddenly, Luo Qingtong thought of something. Inscription. Luo Qingtong immediately thought of the inscription pattern that Little Pig had told her before. If it was an inscription pattern, wouldn't it be possible to realize her idea? If she could really create something that could convert spiritual energy on the gun, it could replace bullets. Then, the gun she created would become a terrifying killing machine in this strange world. As long as she activated the inscription pattern on the gun, she could obtain an endless supply of spiritual energy bullets. Not only that, with the inscription pattern technique, she might even be able to create interstellar weapons that only existed in the 24th century. And let them exist in this strange world in a different way. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong laughed. "Humph, you've helped me a lot this time." After she finished speaking, she went to research the inscription pattern. Without an introductory manual, he couldn't learn it? Dawn. Is. However, when Luo Qingtong really did it, she realized that imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. The inscription pattern on the life and death yin-yang sword was broken in half. Luo Qingtong heard from Tian Mingzi that the inscription pattern was not completed. She thought that the front part was finished and only the second half was left. Who would have thought that the inscription pattern was broken in half? Luo Qingtong looked at the half-completed inscription pattern and felt a headache. For 3 whole days, Luo Qingtong stayed in the Luo family. If she wasn't making bullets, she was explaining the gun techniques and assembly methods to grandfather Luo. It was as if old Master Luo had obtained a new toy. He took apart and reassembled the gun that Luo Qingtong had given him. He was amazed by all sorts of things. In his opinion, this weapon made by Luo Qingtong was too stealthy. It didn't have any energy fluctuations and didn't need to be powered. It was powerful and fast. It was really a killer weapon. Such a weapon was actually made by his granddaughter. Grandfather Luo was very proud of it. If it weren't for the fact that this weapon was the Luo family's killer weapon and couldn't be easily exposed, he would have already taken it out to show off and let everyone see how powerful his granddaughter was. Chapter 428. Luo Qingtong didn't stay in the Luo family for long. After dealing with the matters of the Luo family, she left with xianxia and Little Pig. This time she didn't take the flying boat but left it in the Luo family. This way, if something happened, the Luo family could find her as soon as possible. Moreover, she didn't have much use for the flying boat in the Tianyu Branch Academy. Luo Qingtong, xianxia, and Little Pig hurried all the way and soon arrived at the imperial capital of the Tianyu Empire. The entire imperial capital was unusually lively these days. After the end of the enrollment season, students from various countries under the jurisdiction of the Tianyu Empire began to come to the Tianyu Branch Academy to register. On the streets, there were all kinds of young men and women coming and going. Luo Qingtong wasn't in a hurry to enter the Tianyu Branch Academy. There were still 2 days before the public registration day, so it was useless to go there early. At that time she would have to make a trip there again. She rented a room in the most expensive inn in the imperial capital and put xianxia and Little Pig inside. Then, she set up layers of formations to prevent xianxia from going out and also to prevent people from accidentally breaking in and harming them. Only then did she leave in disguise. The Lanyue family. Luo Qingtong hid in an alley not far from the entrance of the Lanyue family. Her lips twitched as she looked at the densely packed people hiding around the Lanyue family. Needless to say, these people were definitely sent by that man to hide here and keep an eye on her. In order to catch her, that man really didn't let go of any possible place. Luo Qingtong looked at the purple invitation in her hand and was speechless. Forget it, if she really went there with this invitation, she was afraid that before she could reach the entrance of the Lanyue aristocratic family, she would be snatched away by the man who was keeping watch outside the door. She had to find a way to get in. For Luo Qingtong, as long as she could smoothly enter the Lanyue family, she could easily detoxify the poison and leave. After all, the poison wasn't particularly difficult to detoxify for her. As for the follow-up treatment, the Lanyue family had a lot of resources, so there was no need to worry about not being able to nurse the little boy back to health. She just had to remove the poison and leave. With this in mind, Luo Qingtong stayed there, waiting for an opportunity. Wave after wave of people who had set up defenses and were keeping an eye on them left. At this moment, clatter clatter clatter. A horse carriage was approaching from afar. Luo Qingtong looked at the luxurious carriage. When she saw the engraved emblem of the Lanyue family, her eyes suddenly lit up. If he did, he would use the other party's carriage as a cover to enter. Luo Qingtong carefully observed and discovered that the coachman driving the carriage was surprisingly a guard of the Lanyue aristocratic family. The person sitting inside must be a direct descendant of the Lanyue family. He had the purple invitation card from the Lanyue family. As long as he took it out, they should cooperate with him. With this thought in mind, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned. She bent down to pick up a stone and pinched it in her hand. When the carriage passed by the alley, Luo Qingtong raised her hand. With a whoosh, the stone happened to be stuck in front of the left front wheel of the carriage. With a bang, the carriage suddenly jolted. The curtains hanging on the carriage were raised and the 8 treasure bells jingled. In just an instant, the carriage suddenly tilted toward the alley. The angle of the tilt wasn't too big, but with the cover of the raised curtains, Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly swept up like a ghost. With a whoosh, she disappeared into the carriage. Chapter 429. Boom. An incomparably vast and powerful aura suddenly blasted out of the carriage. Sword essence. She sensed the fierce and brazen aura of the attack that seemed to be able to cut through everything. Luo Qingtong's pupils shrank slightly. It was actually a sword essence attack. The so-called sword essence was the fusion of a martial artist's cultivation with his own swordsmanship when he cultivated to the extreme. The sword was in him and the sword was in him. At such a realm, the opponent's every move, even the slightest thought, carried a majestic and fierce sword chi, which was comparable to a martial emperor expert who had achieved oneness of heaven and man. The person sitting in the carriage was actually such a person. Could it be that she had accidentally run into the carriage of the master of the Lanyue family? But this carriage clearly did not belong to the master. Luo Qingtong should have recognized it. Could it be that the master of the Lanyue family had a sudden inspiration today and sat in the carriage of a junior? Luo Qingtong's thoughts raced, but her body did not stop at all. Swish! The red light in her eyes intensified. In an instant, she saw through the weakness of the opponent's sword essence attack. Her body twisted like a snake. Luo Qingtong's body seemed to be soft and boneless. In an instant, she passed through the weakness of the sword essence attack. With a boom, the attack passed through the place where Luo Qingtong had been standing, through the flying carriage curtain, and heavily smashed not far behind the carriage. Young master. Luo Qingtong heard the guard outside anxiously call out. Young master? Luo Qingtong raised her eyes slightly. She had already rushed in front of the guard. The purple invitation in her hand was infused with energy and became as hard as steel, pressing against a certain part of the guard's ribs. Don't move, Luo Qingtong said indifferently with narrowed eyes. I mean you no harm. The aura on this purple invitation is very obvious. It belongs to the Lanyue family. You should be able to sense it. Your visit is very special. The sound that entered his ears was clear and sonorous, like the sound of jade and metal striking each other. It was very pleasing to the ear. Luo Qingtong looked up and saw a handsome young man sitting in front of her. The man wore a purple jade gold crown on his head. His face was like jade as if it had been cut and polished. He looked like a bandit gentleman. However, the aura around his body was piercingly cold and sharp, like an unsheathed sword, diluting the aura of a jade-like gentleman. Young master, are you all right? The guard driving the carriage hurriedly asked. I'm fine. Yan Yuju's voice was indifferent. While Luo Qingtong was sizing him up, he was also sizing up the girl in front of him. It was really surprising that his opponent had easily dodged his sword intent attack. This was the first time Yan Yuju had failed against a martial artist whose strength was lower than hers. Sword intent was originally an extremely domineering attack. Yet now, his sword intent had been dodged. And at close range, when the other party was completely unguarded. Yan Yuju looked at the purple invitation that Luo Qingtong pressed against her ribs and said indifferently, You have my Lanyue family's highest invitation, so you can enter directly. You don't need to use this small path. Is that so? Luo Qingtong looked at her and smiled lazily. I also want to. Unfortunately, I have an enemy here, so I can't show myself in the open. So, young Master Lanyue, I'll have to trouble you. Luo Qingtong said that she was being held hostage in an open and honorable manner. It couldn't be helped. Who would be willing to sneak in like a thief when they had an honored guest? Wasn't she being forced by that man Yi Qianxian? Chapter 430. A voice suddenly came from outside. Brother Ju, why did your carriage suddenly stop here? What was with the attack just now? Are you okay? Outside the carriage, Yu Wenxue stood there with a happy face. Although she was saying words of concern, her gaze was completely different from what she was thinking. With Brother Ju's strength, how could something happen to him in the Tianyu Empire? Yu Wenxue was just taking advantage of this opportunity to talk to Yan Yuju. As the most pampered princess of the Tianyu Empire, Yu Wenxue naturally knew Yan Yuju's identity. This young master of the Yanyu family, who almost no outsiders knew, was the reason why the family was prosperous and no one dared to provoke them. Although the Yanyu family had settled down in the Tianyu Empire, even the great families of the sacred dynasty had to be wary of the other party's background. And all of this was because of Yan Yuju. Yu Wenxue had been warned from a young age not to cause trouble for the Yanyu family. In the Tianyu Empire she could provoke anyone but the Yanyu family, especially Yan Yuju. In the past, Yu Wenxue didn't understand why Yan Yuju was far superior to her royal brother Yuanma in terms of talent and strength, but the one who was called the #1 genius of the Tianyu Empire was Yuanma. Later she found out that it was because Yan Yuju was from a different world from them from the beginning. The title of the #1 genius of the Tianyu Empire was not worth mentioning to the other party. Now that Yan Yuju's carriage had an accident, Yu Wenxue was naturally happy. This was a great opportunity to get closer to the other party. One had to know that she almost never saw Yan Yuju. Even when she occasionally heard that the other party had returned, the latter would quickly leave. She almost never had a chance to see her. Now that she saw Yan Yuju's carriage stop here, she said as she lifted the curtain of Yan Yuju's carriage. Luo Qingtong was just thinking that the voice outside was familiar when she suddenly saw the curtain being lifted. Her eyes instantly turned cold and she subconsciously leaned in front of Yan Yuju. At the same time, she tugged at the blue and white moon robe that the other party was wearing. It covered half of her body and even blocked the purple invitation card that was filled with energy and was pressed against the other party like steel. Big Brother Ju. Yu Wenshue's face was filled with joy as she lifted the curtain. She had just called out shyly when her expression instantly changed. Who are you? She shrieked. Why are you in Brother Ju's carriage? Yu Wenxue looked at the scene in front of her with an ugly expression. Luo Qingtong just happened to be leaning on Yan Yuju's knee. From Yu Wenshue's point of view, it looked like Luo Qingtong was half lying on Yan Yutian's leg. The young girl's body was covered by a man's robe, covering half of her body. Because Luo Qingtong was in a hurry, the front of Yan Yuju's inner robe was pulled open a little, revealing the exquisite white collarbone and slightly exposed chest. And because Luo Qingtong's right hand was holding that purple invitation card that was filled with energy, it was sinking into the blue and white moon robe. In Yu Wenshue's eyes, the other party was shamelessly seducing Yan Yuju. Her hand was already inside the robe and she didn't know what she was doing. Instantly Yu Wenshue's eyes turned red with anger. Slut. She raised her hand and slapped Luo Qingtong. Chapter 431. However, Yu Wenxue didn't even have time to slap her. Luo Qingtong, who was bent over and looked like she was lying on Yan Yuejue's lap, had a sharp look in her eyes. She hadn't even caused trouble for Yu Wenxue and this woman had already come knocking on her door. She wanted to slap her? Seeing Yu Wenshue's slap, Luo Qingtong suddenly sneered. She pressed down on the purple invitation card under Yan Yuejue's ribs, warning her not to meddle in other people's business. She quickly raised her other hand. Slap. Luo Qingtong's palm blocked in midair and pushed aside Yu Wenshue's hand. Then she slapped Yu Wenshue's face. Not only that, Luo Qingtong raised her leg and kicked Yu Wenxue in the stomach, sending her flying. Bang! Yu Wenxue didn't even have time to react before she was sent flying by Luo Qingtong's kick. Ah! She fell to the ground and curled up like a shrimp. She was in so much pain that her face was contorted. You actually dare to hit me? Yu Wenxue looked at Luo Qingtong in disbelief. She actually dared to hit her. She actually dared to hit her. Yu Wenxue had always been domineering in Tianyu Imperial City. She was the only daughter of Tianyu Empress and Yu Wenma's younger sister. She had always been the one to hit others. No one had ever hit her. But now she was being hit. and it was a slut who seduced the man she liked. Brother Jew. She lay on the ground and looked at Yen Yuejue in the carriage with teary eyes. She hoped that he could speak up for her and teach the person who dared to hit her a lesson. However, Yen Yuejue only glanced at her indifferently. Luo Qingtong wiped her hands and looked at her. Seventh princess, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't lift someone else's curtains. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as hitting you next time. If this wasn't the wrong place and the wrong time, she would have killed you Wenxue long ago. You Wenshua's eyes were filled with hatred. She lay on the ground with pain and humiliation in her heart. As a pampered princess, when had she ever been treated like this? However, she didn't even have a chance to act up. Yen Yuejue was protecting this woman. This realization made Yu Wenshua's lips to bleed. With her here, she couldn't do anything to this audacious woman. She was clearly the most pampered princess of Tianyu's empire. Now this woman had hit him and he couldn't do anything to her. Yu Wenshua's heart's heart. Brother Jew. She called out pitifully again. However, there wasn't any sound to esientis to the end. She ttsss sheeses. Tts, still have self-respect twos. She's to this to wises azes s's hers beyond the carriage. Seeing Yuan Shui run away crying, Yen Yuju's expression was indifferent. She looked at Luo Qingtong beside her. Oh, she wanted to hit, so she hit. What, do you want to stand up for her? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows at her. She didn't say anything just now. Wasn't it too late to stand up now? But if the other party really opened her mouth, Luo Qingtong felt that it was necessary for her to return home. She never helped her enemies. Even if the other party only spoke up for Yu Wenxue. But, if she wasn't happy, who could do anything to her? Chapter 432. I don't know her well. Yen Yuejue cut off his relationship with Yu Wenxue with one sentence. He'd left home at a young age and barely knew Yu Wenxue. How could he stand out for her? He just felt that with her status, there was no need to bicker with Yu Wenxue. After all, she was an honored guest of the house of Yen Yuejue. But since she liked it, then so be it. Is that so? That's for the best. Luo Qingtong looked at him with a meaningful smile. I have a grudge with Tianyu's imperial family. It's best if your house of Yen Yuejue doesn't get involved. Given the grudge between the Luo family and Tianyu's imperial family, as well as the fact that Tianyu's imperial family wouldn't break off the engagement no matter what, she and Tianyu's imperial family would have to fight sooner or later. Since she'd already destroyed the Fei family, Luo Qingtong didn't mind spending a bit more time to destroy Tianyu's imperial family. Hearing the coldness in her words, Yen Yuejue glanced at her and nodded. House of Yen Yuejue won't interfere in this matter. Since she was an honored guest of the house of Yen Yuejue, they naturally sided with Luo Qingtong. Tianyu's imperial family was nothing to him. Even if the empire suddenly turned upside down, it had nothing to do with house of Yen Yuejue. Very good. Luo Qingtong looked at him and smiled. She looked the man up and down and said, since you just made a promise, I can give you some advice. There's a problem with the sword art you're cultivating. Although it has miraculous effects on sword intent, the drawbacks are too obvious. As she spoke, she narrowed her eyes and said, if I'm not wrong, what you're cultivating should be the only copy of a sword technique. Although it's powerful, it's incomplete. As she spoke, she met the man's sharp gaze and smiled leisurely. Don't look at me like that. Even if I investigated you in advance, who else would know about such a secret except for you? Luo Qingtong leaned against the wall of the carriage. I'm saying this because I can see the hidden danger in your body. As Luo Qingtong spoke, her gaze lingered on the man. At this time, Yen Yuju had already put on her outer robe again. The young master, who was as light as jade, had a body full of sharp and unhindered sword chi. Her posture was tall and straight like jade and bamboo. His aura had almost completely merged with the sword chi. He was only one step away from being able to completely restrain himself. At that time, his sword Dao would reach the great accomplishment stage, and his sword will would be able to transform into a physical entity, truly entering the realm of man and sword as one. If you don't want your sword Dao to remain stagnant after mastering it, you should avoid the 4 left and 3 right spots below your ribs when you fuse your sword chi and sword intent. Instead, you should go to the front 8 and the left 7. Luo Qingtong said. She leaned against the wall of the carriage and closed her eyes to rest. She had already said what she needed to say. It was up to him whether he listened or not. She was not some kind of compassionate saint who would cry and shout for help when she saw a problem with a person's cultivation method. If Yan Yuju hadn't made a promise on behalf of the Yanyu aristocratic family that they wouldn't care about the Tianyu imperial family, she wouldn't have mentioned this to him. I'll remember Mrs. Words. In the carriage, Yan Yuju's voice slowly sounded. It was very cautious. Other than him, no one knew the origin of his sword art. Luo Qingtong easily pointed out the drawbacks. He had no choice but to believe it. Chapter 433. The carriage swayed as it sped into the Lanyue family residence. The gatekeeper recognized that this was the young master's carriage and hurriedly went in to call someone out to greet them, but he was stopped by Lanyue. I'll give you an hour. Luo Qingtong looked at him. I'll leave in an hour. You can make the arrangements yourselves. Luo Qingtong had taken a great risk in coming to the Lanyue family residence. If it weren't for the promise she made at 9 Shaman Mountain and that little boy wasn't annoying, she wouldn't have made this trip. Therefore she absolutely wouldn't stay here for long. Half an hour was already her bottom line. Lanyue nodded and immediately went to make the arrangements without saying anything. He had just returned to the Lanyue family residence and didn't know what had happened. It wasn't until he found Lanyue that he learned the ins and outs of the matter. In other words, she cured little cousin and relieved the poison in his body? He looked at the old man. Yes. Lanyue said with a solemn expression. It's not just relieved. Little Lucky's poison is almost completely cured. Although the poison still remains in his body, it has no effect on him. He can even practice martial arts now. It's just that the isolation of the poison requires us to continuously inject power into it to maintain it. That's why I invited this evil doctor with the highest form of visiting card. Lanyue said, you also know how complicated and difficult the poison in Little Lucky's body is. After so many years we've almost given up. Even the medical expert that your master invited said that his poison could be cured but not without damaging the foundation. But now there's no problem with Little Lucky's body. This evil doctor's medical skills are unfathomable. Moreover, she's also an alchemist. Speaking of this, Lanyue was incomparably glad that he had made a prompt decision at that time. If he hadn't sent a purple-level visiting card to Luo Qingtong early, she might not have come to their Lanyue family residence. After all, the current evil doctor was a hot commodity in the entire True Spill continent. A newly born alchemist. And she wasn't an old monster with years of experience. Who knew how many great families and powers wanted to befriend her? It was their fortune that the Lanyue family was able to invite him. And Xianxia nodded, thinking of the advice the other party had given her on the carriage. His medical skills were truly unfathomable. Then grandfather quickly arranged for her to meet with Little Lucky. Yan Yuju told him about Luo Qingtong's matter. When he heard that Luo Qingtong had to hide from her enemies, that she couldn't show herself openly, and that she would leave in an hour, Master Lanyue's jaw almost dropped. Enemies? Are you kidding me? With his background in the Black Field and his current reputation, how could anyone find trouble with the evil doctor? Old Master Lanyue was well informed. He knew that after evil Dr. Gue Tong destroyed the Fei clan, other than himself, Blackfield had also issued a warning to the Tianyu royal family, telling them not to touch evil Dr. Gue Tong. The wording was extremely harsh and it was said that it came from the main city. With such protection, there was actually someone who could force the evil physician to hide everywhere? Could it be that it was related to that? That's right, the evil doctor's ability was so outstanding. It was likely that the people above had appeared in front of them for some reason, right? Thinking of this, Master Lanyue felt a chill in his heart. He hurriedly made sure that no information about the evil doctor was leaked. Otherwise, even their Lanyue family residence wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Luo Qingtong didn't know that Master Lanyue's imagination had already gone to the ends of the earth. She was currently in Yan Yuju's room, flipping through the books that Yan Yuju gave her to pass the time. Chapter 434. Oh. Luo Qingtong looked at the handwritten book that was sandwiched between the pile of books. When her eyes swept over it, she suddenly froze. This is... Luo Qingtong picked out the handwritten book from the pile. Inscription pattern explanation? Luo Qingtong looked at the handwritten book. The handwriting was very clear. Especially the word, inscription. This was a book that talked about inscription patterns? Luo Qingtong's eyes instantly lit up. It wasn't that she didn't ask Yen Yang and the others to help her collect inscription pattern books. But inscription patterns were incomparably profound. In the True Spill continent, there were no records related to inscription patterns. Even inscription pattern engraved tools were very rare. Thinking about it, in the True Spill continent, where even refining pills was highly revered, the inscription technique, was likely an extinct existence. Even inscription tools were extremely rare. Besides Luo Qingtong's life and death yin-yang sword, Luo Qingtong had only heard about inscription tools from Yi Qianxian. Before she came to the Sky Universe branch, she had already contacted Yen Yang and the others through a special method. She had asked them to help her collect inscription tools in the Black Field. She had expressed her willingness to use the opportunity to help her refine pills in exchange. However, until now there was still no news. With the Black Field's ability to spread news in addition to her great reputation, if there really was someone who had an inscription tool, there would be someone who would be willing to take it out and give it a try. But in these past few days there was no news at all. If it wasn't that there were no inscription tools here, then it was that they were very rare. They were so rare that they only existed in the hands of old monsters and superpowers. But the other party didn't have any intention of taking it out to exchange. Luo Qingtong frowned. She was prepared to change the condition to a rental if she still couldn't get an inscription tool. But then she found the inscription pattern explanation here. Although the content was a little messy, it made people feel a little confused. But Luo Qingtong could see that the other party was seriously studying inscription patterns. In the True Spill continent, there was someone who was studying inscription patterns? And from the looks of it, he had already figured out something? Luo Qingtong looked at the book of inscriptions. What was written on it was some of the other party's views on inscription patterns. It was similar to reading notes. There were more personal thoughts and opinions, but less about inscription patterns. But since there were such notes, it meant that the other party must have a lot of knowledge about inscriptions. Even if it was the most superficial, it would be fine. What Luo Qingtong lacked the most now was entry level. As long as she could learn the basics with her ability, there would be no more obstacles on the path of inscription. Luo Qingtong thought and put the handwritten copy aside. He was prepared to ask Yen Yuju after this matter was over, hoping to find the owner of this handwritten copy. Right at this moment, Fairy Sister. A figure rushed in from outside the door and threw himself into Luo Qingtong's arms. Luo Qingtong didn't know what was going on, but she was embraced by someone. This child was still so passionate and unguarded. But before he threw himself at her, shouldn't he look at her face first? Did he throw himself at the wrong person? Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. Young master, you've got the wrong person. This little guy had seen her face. Luo Qingtong didn't intend to reveal her identity. I am evil Dr. Ghost Eye, not some fairy sister. Luo Qingtong didn't want to complain about this title. Little fairy or whatever, this kind of description was really too far away from her. Chapter 435. That's impossible. The little Shota looked up at her. Fairy sister, I recognize you. It's you. As he spoke, his eyes flickered as if he was asking for praise. Fairy sister, you're playing hide and seek with me, right? As he spoke, he raised an incomparably cute smile. Fairy sister, you can't hide from me. Let me tell you a secret. Since young Xiaoxi has a special ability to recognize people. No matter how Fairy sister changes her appearance, I'll be able to recognize you immediately. These words were whispered in Luo Qingtong's ear. Damn. Luo Qingtong looked at Yen Yuju, who had already walked to the door and was about to enter. She immediately raised her hand and struck out, closing the door in an instant. You said that no matter what I change into, you'll be able to recognize me? Luo Qingtong looked at the little boy in front of her seriously. The latter still looked the same as when he was in Nine Magi Mountain, but he looked a lot more cheerful. At this moment, when he met Luo Qingtong's serious gaze, the little boy was clearly a little nervous. Then he bit his lip and nodded. Fairy sister, did I do something wrong? The little boy was very uneasy. He had just seen Luo Qingtong's expression change. Could it be that Fairy sister didn't want to recognize him? But he had always missed Fairy sister. Even in his dreams he wanted to find Fairy sister. Only by staying by her side could he find an unprecedented sense of security. The little boy already knew that the poison in his body was cured. Not only the python poison in Nine Magi Mountain, but the poison that had been tormenting him for a long time was also cured. He could practice martial arts and no longer need to be called a good-for-nothing by others. No one could be respectful to him in front of others, but call him a good-for-nothing behind his back. The little boy knew that all of this was brought about by Luo Qingtong. She had even disregarded the danger and came to cure him. Xiaoxi had just heard from his grandfather that the evil Dr. Gui Tong had avoided his enemies and came to cure him of the poison. He had told him not to reveal her identity outside. The little boy silently remembered these words in his heart and swore that he would not let Fairy sister encounter any danger. Just now, Fairy Sister's expression changed so much. Was it because he called out her identity? With that thought in mind, the little fellow said seriously, Fairy Sister, don't worry. I didn't tell Grandpa and the others about your identity. They don't know that you are Fairy Sister. The little boy was well aware of his situation. He knew how many people wanted him dead. Because he didn't want to be a burden to Luo Qingtong, he kept his mouth shut about Luo Qingtong ever since he came back. If he hadn't seen Luo Qingtong and been too excited, he wouldn't have suddenly called out her name. I'm fine. Luo Qingtong looked at the pure and lovely little boy in front of her, and her face was indescribably tangled. She didn't care that the little Shota had exposed her identity. So what if others knew that the evil Dr. Ghost Eye was the fairy sister who had saved him? It wasn't like Yi Qianxian hadn't seen her real appearance before. What really made Luo Qingtong's expression change was the little boy's ability to recognize her at a glance no matter what she looked like. In this way, her identity as Luo Qingtong could no longer be hidden. Thinking about how the other party could recognize her at a glance and call out her identity when she was Luo Qingtong frowned. Chapter 436. Xiaoxi, there's something I want to tell you. As Luo Qingtong spoke, she activated the Qiongqi's 100 transformations and returned to her original appearance. When you see me like this, you can't let others know that I'm the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, understand? Okay. The little boy nodded obediently. He vaguely sensed that Luo Qingtong was doing this because of the enemy his grandfather had mentioned. Fairy Sister, don't worry. He nodded seriously and said, I won't let others know that you're the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. When we're in public, I'll take care to keep a distance from this identity of yours. The little boy's senses were very sharp. He could sense that Luo Qingtong wanted him to keep it a secret only because of this identity. Other times it didn't matter. Good boy, Xiaoxi. Luo Qingtong indeed meant this. She didn't expect the little boy to understand so quickly. It seemed that he was a child from a large family. Although his mind was pure and kind, he still had quite a bit of intelligence. In fact, Luo Qingtong had many methods to prevent the little boy from revealing her identity to prevent future trouble. But looking at the young man's eyes that were filled with pure trust in her, she couldn't bring herself to use those methods. Especially since the other party had been hiding her identity as Fairy Sister ever since they returned from Nine Magi Mountain. Luo Qingtong felt that she should be able to trust this little boy. Receiving Luo Qingtong's praise, the little boy was very happy and looked at Luo Qingtong with a gaze full of admiration. Fairy Sister, your eyes are fine. They're especially beautiful. He looked at Luo Qingtong's eyes and said happily, Is that so? Thank you. Xiaoxi's body is also very good. Luo Qingtong didn't need to take the little boy's pulse to see that the aura in his body was very strong. Come here, I'll completely detoxify you. It could be seen that the people of the Lanyue family loved Xiaoxi very much. Luo Qingtong found a large amount of thick aura in his body, which wrapped and isolated the toxins very well. Clearly, the people of the Lanyue aristocratic family would inject little Lucky with their aura every day to ensure that his poison would not spread. If he didn't truly love her, he wouldn't have done it so meticulously. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and injected her aura into the little boy's body. Bear with it, she said to the little fellow lying on the bed. The latter had already taken off his clothes and was biting a small wooden stick in his mouth. When he heard Luo Qingtong's words, he nodded heavily. The little fellow knew that as long as the poison in his body was completely removed, he would be able to get rid of his previous life. He could do it. Immortal sister, just do it. I'm not afraid of pain. Every time the toxins in his body were touched by someone, he would feel so much pain that he would rather die than live. The little boy was already used to it. When Luo Qingtong heard this, she recalled how the little fellow had blocked the giant python's bite for her on the Nine Magi Mountains. He hadn't even cried out in pain. The little young master who grew up in an extravagant family had such a high tolerance for pain. It wasn't because he was strong enough, but because he had suffered too much. The person who had poisoned him was too vicious. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned cold and she began to guide the toxins to seep out of his body. With her eye technique, Luo Qingtong effortlessly forced the poison out of the little fellow's body. Chapter 437. Demonic Doctor. Seeing her come out, Master Yanyu stood up with a whoosh. In the hall outside there was only him, Yanyu Ju, and one or two trusted aides. It was extremely secretive. Demonic Doctor, how is my grandson? Master Yanyu asked impatiently. He's fine. The poison has been forced out. There won't be any problems in the future, Luo Qingtong said, looking at him and taking out the handwritten copy she had seen before. Old Master Lanue, I would like to ask, where did you get this handwritten copy? Handwritten copy? Master Yanyu was very happy now. He followed Luo Qingtong's hand and looked at the handwritten copy in her hand with an indescribable puzzlement. What handwritten copy? What is this? I just found this when I was flipping through the books in my room. I thought it was quite interesting, so I wanted to ask, Luo Qingtong said lightly. I don't know if Master knows who wrote this handwritten copy? A handwritten copy found in the room? Master Yanyu was puzzled. He asked Luo Qingtong where the handwritten copy was placed and where it was mixed with the other books. Then with an ah, he raised his hand and slapped his head. Look at me. How could I forget this? He said to Luo Qingtong, Demonic Doctor, please don't blame me. I just didn't remember. This handwritten copy belongs to an old friend of mine. I think I accidentally brought this handwritten copy when I asked to borrow books from him. He hurriedly said to his trusted aide, Quick, go to Master Shu's house and ask him about the origin of this handwritten copy. That trusted aide deftly responded and quickly left. Luo Qingtong saw that there was still an hour left, so she wasn't in a hurry to leave. She just waited here for the results. That trusted aide of the Yanyu family was very fast. Luo Qingtong only waited for half a quarter of an hour before the other party ran back, panting. Reporting to clan head, Elder Shu said that this is a handwritten copy written by a teacher from the Tianyu Academy called Song Chen. He's an instructor of the Tianyu Branch Academy, and he's known as a lunatic in the Tianyu Branch Academy. Rumor has it that he's so obsessed with his research that he's gone mad every day. The confidant told him all the information he had gathered, no matter how big or small. It was especially detailed regarding Song Chen. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes as she spoke. Song City? What a coincidence, the other party was actually an instructor from the Tianyu Branch Academy. This saved her a lot of trouble. After getting the answer she wanted, Luo Qingtong no longer stayed in the Lanue family. She directly boarded the carriage with Yanyu Ju. The latter sent her off like how he came, and only put her down when they were near the inn that Luo Qingtong rented. Miss, take care of yourself. Yanyu Ju looked at the delicate and pretty young girl in front of him. Chapter 438. Oh my God. Little Pig stood in front of the windowsill and covered his eyes with his two hooves. He couldn't bear to see the scene below. This woman is courting death. Not only did she come back after going out for so long, she even came back with a man. They even sat in the same carriage and were talking and laughing with each other. She even accepted something from him. Oh my God. Little Pig's hind legs trembled when he sensed the oppressive aura from the man beside him. He didn't even dare to look at Xianxian's face. Even an idiot would know that his face was as dark as ink. Oh my God. This man better not take out his anger on me this time. I'm really innocent. Just as Little Pig's heart was trembling, the door to the room was opened. I'm back. Luo Qingtong smiled like a blooming flower. However, she was met with silence in the room. Little Pig looked at Yi Qianren, whose face was dark and whose aura was incomparably gloomy. His legs trembled violently. In the next second, it let out a howl and scurried out of the room with its four hooves. Oh, I have something to do outside. You guys talk. You guys talk. His movements were so fast that he ran out of the room before Luo Qingtong could react. Strange, it's already so late. Why did he go out? Luo Qingtong looked at the sky. It was already dark. She had wasted a lot of time at the Lanue residence, so it was already late for her to come back. However, it was difficult to be discovered in the evening. Luo Qingtong had waited outside the Lanue residence for so long just to wait for the sky to turn dark. Huh? She knows it's late? Yi Qianxian looked at her coldly. Where did you go? He asked expressionlessly. The aura around him had already frozen to the point where it was hard to restrain. This woman actually went on a date with another man. I went to the Lanue residence. Luo Qingtong was baffled. She blinked and felt that Yi Qianxian's words were a little strange. This tone? Why did it sound like he was extorting a confession? Could it be that the Black Field and the Falling Moon aristocratic family had some private conflicts? As she was thinking, she walked to little Ming Zun, who was on the windowsill, and bent down to pick him up. All right, don't be angry. I'm there to detoxify people. It's not like you don't know. This man had set up an inescapable net around the Lanue family just to catch her. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong smiled. Could it be that he was unhappy to see her return safe and sound? Her eyes curved into crescents and she immediately gave Yi Qianxian a reason to be in a bad mood. Are you disappointed to see me return safely? As she spoke, she pinched the tender flesh on his cheeks. Unfortunately, I won't give you the chance to catch me. As she spoke, she kissed little Ming Zun's lips, then licked her lips and said, "Be good." He would obediently stay by her side and wait for her to grow up before he counterattacked. At that time, even if his real body came, she wouldn't be afraid. As she thought of this, Luo Qingtong smiled even more happily. Yi Qianxian looked at her with a cold expression. For some reason, the anger in his heart slowly dissipated. This woman was so heartless. If he couldn't even move her, how could others? Even so, he was still very unhappy with the man who came back with her. When Luo Qingtong wasn't paying attention, Yi Qianxian's figure suddenly became much thinner. Chapter 439. Boom. Yan Yuju's carriage had already gone far away. In the carriage, the man's figure was handsome and tall, as straight as a bamboo. Yan Yuju closed his eyes to rest, and the words that Luo Qingtong pointed out the flaws in his body sword cultivation kept echoing in his mind. He tried to adjust the circulation route of the sword qi in his body. At this moment, with a boom, a warning sign appeared in his heart, and an extremely strong sense of danger suddenly descended. In the next second, countless sword qi suddenly burst out from his body and enveloped him in it. Boom. In the instant that he moved, the carriage that he was sitting in suddenly exploded into countless pieces under a powerful attack. The incomparably fierce sword qi suddenly rushed out from the exploded carriage, forming a huge sword mass in midair. Yan Yuju's figure appeared from it, and his sharp eyes swept around. Young master. The guard who was driving the carriage, who was protected by him at the critical moment, was still in a state of shock, and his voice trembled as he spoke. I'm fine. Yan Yuju retracted his gaze. There were no attackers in the surroundings. Strange, looking at the carriage that was blown to pieces, his eyes narrowed slightly. In the next second, the sword light around him gathered together, and he disappeared in midair together with the guard who was driving the carriage. At the same time in the inn, Luo Qingtong still wanted to tease little Ming Zun. As soon as she lowered her head, she found that his body had become much thinner, and she was instantly shocked. What's wrong with you? What's going on? Your soul power has decreased so much. Luo Qingtong saw that he had shrunk in her arms, and she was instantly anxious. What was this guy doing? If this divided soul accidentally dissipated, it would also cause damage to his body. Otherwise, why would Luo Qingtong spend so much effort to replenish his soul power, and constantly check if he was in the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood? She was afraid that this divided soul of his would accidentally dissipate. At that time, his body would also be injured. Why are you always so worrisome? Did the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding would absorb your strength? Why didn't you say anything? Luo Qingtong's brows furrowed. She quickly took out the Yin soul pills from her bosom and fed him one by one. Yi Qianxian's entire body was much weaker now that he had split out such a ball of soul power. His small face was slightly pale. Seeing Luo Qingtong hurriedly take out the Yin soul pill, his heart was very happy. This woman still cared about him. Thinking of this, he opened his mouth and let Luo Qingtong feed him one pill after another with a cold face. I'm fine. His voice was cold and his cheeks puffed up as he chewed. It was indescribably cute. You're still fine? It's about to dissipate. Luo Qingtong frowned and looked at him. What did you do? Why did it suddenly become like this? No. Little Nether Venerable turned his head coolly. F***ck. Luo Qingtong saw that he was determined not to say anything. She gritted her teeth and didn't continue to ask. She only checked her body and the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood from top to bottom. After finding that no power had been absorbed, she was immediately relieved. It was good that the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood had absorbed it. She didn't know what this man did to dissipate so much soul power. Be careful. If this divided soul dissipates, your body will also be injured. Chapter 440. Yi Qianxian narrowed his eyes as he looked at her. Will you let the main body dissipate? Although this woman always made him so angry that he stomped his feet and tricked him in all sorts of ways, she had never hurt him. He believed in her. Otherwise, he would have exploded his soul when he was imprisoned. How could he allow her to blaspheme him like this? Was he someone who could be kissed and hugged by anyone? Not even a wisp of his soul. Only this woman could do such a thing. Of course not, Luo Qingtong said without thinking. But there's always a chance. What if I didn't notice? She raised her hand and pinched his cheeks. Forget it. Fortunately, nothing happened this time. You can keep this bottle of soul pills. Luo Qingtong was still worried. She immediately took out a useless ring, strung it with a red string, and hung it around Yi Qianxian's neck. Okay, this is all soul pills. If something like this happens again and I'm not around, you can immediately take it out and eat it. This way you'll be fine. Little Pig, who just happened to come back from outside, oh my god. This woman doesn't know how cruel this man is. She actually gave him a bunch of soul pills. It had clearly seen that the soul power that had suddenly disappeared was clearly directed at the man who had returned with her. This woman is still indulging him like this. Little Pig couldn't bear to watch anymore. Yi Qianxian coldly glanced at it, warning it not to say a word. He lowered his head and looked at the useless ring hanging on his neck. His expression softened slightly. Okay. He nodded. For the next 2 days, Luo Qingtong didn't leave her room. She looked through Song Cheng's information. She discovered that this person was really a strange person. He had been in Qianyu branch for decades and had never left. What gave Luo Qingtong a headache was that he had a strange temper and was very difficult to get close to. Most importantly, other than the necessary low-level classes, he didn't appear anywhere else. Moreover, he basically ignored everyone. Luo Qingtong frowned. How could she get information about the inscription pattern technique from such a person? Luo Qingtong looked at his profile and realized that he had suffered a lot of ridicule and teasing because of his research on inscription patterns. Therefore, they were very vigilant when strangers approached them. It wouldn't be easy to get information about the inscription technique from such a person. It seems that we can only start from the side. Luo Qingtong looked at the information. A teacher of the lower classes, right? Then she would go to the lower class. Anyway, for Luo Qingtong, it didn't matter which class she went to. Even if this low-grade class was called the trash class in the Tianyu Branch Academy, it was still the same. For Luo Qingtong, no matter how good the tutor's teaching was, it might not be as good as her own dojitsu. As long as the tutor could explain the lesson clearly, it would be fine. As for the rest, it didn't matter. However, Luo Qingtong didn't know if she could get what she wanted. After all, she was the #1 student in Dongli country. If the people in Qianyu Branch Academy didn't agree to let her go to the lower class, then there was nothing she could do. At that time, should she stir up some trouble? For example, beating up a certain princess Yuanxue? Then she should be able to enter the lower class easily, right? However, on the day of Tianyu Branch's registration, Luo Qingtong realized that she had thought too much. Chapter 441. At the entrance of Tianyu Branch Academy. Luo Qingtong stood with a group of people from Dongli country, waiting for the teacher to announce her name list. She met xuanhuan and the others on the way here. They were all from the eastern border country, so they naturally stood together. Xuanhuan's name was given by Luo Qingtong, so he was very grateful to her. The group of people from Dongli country came together. Relying on his strength and the prestige of the Chu family, Xuanhuan had become the leader of the group. His attitude toward Luo Qingtong influenced the group. At this moment, the group of people from Dongli country were eagerly waiting for their names to be announced. Qingtong, you will definitely be assigned to the elite class this time. Xuanhuan looked at Luo Qingtong and said with a smile. The group of people came from the same place, so they quickly became familiar with each other. Xuanhuan calmly called out Luo Qingtong's name, but he didn't know that in the latter's sleeve Little Pig was sweating for him. Young man, I respect you as a true hero. Fortunately, although Yi Qianxian was prone to jealousy, he wasn't crazy enough to make a move on someone just because they called out Luo Qingtong's name. Looking at the seemingly cute but actually ferocious little doll sitting in the sleeve, Little Pig silently moved a little further away. Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong's name was called from outside. The teacher in charge of announcing the students' class assignments raised his voice and shouted. Dongli country's top student assigned to the class. The instructor's voice suddenly stopped at this moment. What's going on? Looking at the class on the list, the teacher almost thought that he had seen wrongly. How could it be this? He carefully looked at it again and again. After confirming that he didn't see wrongly, he said in disbelief, low class. Wow. A commotion broke out in the surroundings. A top student was actually assigned to the low class. All of a sudden, the surrounding students who were waiting to register were in an uproar. Even those who did not pay attention to the situation here understood what was going on from the discussions of the people around them. Low class, that was the trash class. Most of the people who were sent in were not talented and were destined to have no achievements in the future. Otherwise, it would be those who had no talent at all and were just idling around in the Tianyu branch. In short, it was just a place to waste time. When the people of Tianyu Branch Academy mentioned the lower class, they all had an indifferent attitude. The people inside were trash at the bottom of the Tianyu Branch Academy. Because of their lack of talent, they were destined to have no achievements. The teaching of the lower classes was also the worst. The standards of the instructors inside might not even be as good as some of the genius students in the elite classes. Luo Qingtong, the top student of Dongli country, was assigned to such a class? This must be a joke. If it was an ordinary student, everyone would have just listened to it. After all, it wasn't as if there hadn't been students with decent grades who were thrown into the trash class because they offended someone. Most of those people quickly quieted down after entering the trash class. From then on, he had no more achievements. However, this Luo Qingtong was the number one in Dongli country. This was the first time that a top student was assigned to the trash class. What's more, Luo Qingtong was the fiancé of the empire's fifth prince. Everyone looked at this scene in disbelief. Their faces were filled with unspeakable astonishment. Could it be a mistake? With her grades and identity, she shouldn't be assigned to the trash class. Chapter 442. We don't accept this. Luo Qingtong is the top student in Dongli Kingdom. How can she be assigned to the lower class? This class allocation is unfair. Xuanhuan was the one who spoke. He entered Tianyu Branch Academy with Luo Qingtong's recommendation letter and was assigned to the upper class. Now that she heard that Luo Qingtong was assigned to the lower class, she immediately shouted indignantly. How dare you? When Xuanhuan's voice was heard, a cold voice was heard. Behind the teacher's seat, a young man dressed in blue silk suddenly looked coldly in Xuanhuan's direction. Who are you to question the academy's decision? Luo Qingtong did defeat Luo Qingtong and became the top student in Dongli Kingdom. But according to what we know, Luo Xining was wearing the Luo family's heirloom armor and her strength sword. Under such circumstances, Luo Qingtong defeated her easily. We have reason to suspect that she is not qualified to be the top student. Moreover, the young man looked at Xuanhuan arrogantly and said, Luo Qingtong was too ruthless in the arena. She even dared to attack the invigilator. Considering all the above, it is not wrong to assign her to the lower class. If you don't accept this then, he sneered, you don't have to enter Tianyu Branch Academy. Xuanhuan looked at him and his face turned red. Or you. This is the academy's decision. It is up to the teachers to decide. You don't have the right to decide. Humph. The top 10 students in the genius ranking can participate in the decision of class assignment. My words have the same effect as the teachers. When you enter the top 10 of the genius ranking, then you can question my qualifications. The young man looked arrogant. He looked at Xuanhuan with disdain. Zhan Haoping, I await your instructions. Wow. As soon as the young man finished speaking, the registration area was in an uproar. The top 10 students in the genius ranking are likely to enter the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin, right? Yes. It was said that at the end of the year, those who managed to secure a spot in the top 10 of the genius ranking would be recruited into the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. The top 10 of the genius ranking are half the students of the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. I didn't expect to see such a person at the registration today. These top 10 students on the genius ranking are so domineering. They actually have the same authority as the teachers. That's right. I've heard of this Zhan Haoping. He's ranked 5th on the genius ranking. He has basically entered the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. By the way, I heard that his instructor was old Chu, who was seriously injured a few days ago. Someone whispered, no wonder he wanted to find trouble with Luo Qingtong. I heard that when Elder Chu was invigilating the examination in Dongli country, he was angry because of Luo Qingtong's collision.